Introduce Godron Maplaz. Oh wait, Gordon Maples. When Gordon started on the Secular Student Alliance staff, in my first email to him, I said, "Hello, Godron," and now there's a email forward that is Godron, just in case it gets mistyped. And we also frequently at the office talk about the Large Godron Collider. So important Gordon-related program activities that go on at the Secular Student Alliance. Gordon is the regional program manager at the Secular Student Alliance, and he found himself in that position by going and starting a group at his campus and then deciding, you know what, one group at one campus, anybody can do that. I'm going to go ahead and organize the entire southeastern region on my own just because it seems like something I can do. And he did, and it was amazing. And we were like, hey, we really like that. We'd like you to keep doing that. How would you like a job? So now he does that, and he coordinates the regional campus organizing program throughout the entire United States. And today he's going to talk to you about the very important topic of promoting your group so that it doesn't die. Please join me in welcoming Gordon.
All right, so as Og said, I'm going to be talking about promoting your group so that your group doesn't die. As Og said, my name is Gordon Maples. Normally at this point I say I am also known as the Great Satan, but we have Lucian Greaves here, so I can't very much make that claim. I run the regional program, which means that I am in charge of all of our field organizers out in the world. I previously ran the Southeast, initially as a volunteer, and then as an RCO, Regional Campus Organizer, and now I am in charge of all those field people. I also run a movie blog, which I promise will be relevant later in this talk. But any case, let's just get on to what I'm talking about here, which is not working. Okay, group promotion. All right, so I'm talking about doing group promotion, specifically so your group doesn't die. If the slide works. The PowerPoint's, sorry, locking up a little bit. Okay. So why, all right, group promotion so your group doesn't die. Woo. All right, why is this important? This is important because it's very important, because you're not doing this enough. In our experience as organizers, we know why your groups die in general, and it all comes back down to because you don't promote enough. So yeah, you need to promote so your group doesn't die. So I don't want your group to die, our organizers don't want your group to die, you don't want your group to die. So let's make sure that your group doesn't die and talk about ways to promote on your campus. Start with flyers. Everybody knows about flyers. This is universally common at every campus out there. You can do flyering. Flyers are also immensely creative in that you can do existential flyers, as we call them, that they're filled with dread and loneliness. Actually, that means that you're letting people know that your group exists with your flyer. Or you can do flyers specifically for events. So this is the Secular Panthers at Georgia State, which do a really good practice that I would like to share with you, in which they have 2 stacks of flyers at all of their group meetings. One of them is an existential flyer, and the other one is a specific meeting or event flyer. And they have their members take these flyers when they come to meetings and then spread them around campus. It's an easy way to make your members into viral carriers of the good word of your group. So I recommend doing that. Here's some other examples. This is what we send out to our groups that are starting. It's a simple existential flyer that you can put around campus. There in the middle, you can get an example of just a random service project that a group did on Earth Day. They made a flyer for that. And 2 times a year, typically Darwin Day and Ask an Atheist Day, we send out pre-branded flyers that look really professional, and you can customize them however you want with Sharpies or whatever. So you want to keep your eyes open in April and February for the pre-branded flyers for Ask an Atheist Day and Darwin Day. So the big thing about flyers, a lot of people overlook this. If your flyers are getting torn down, it might actually be the institution doing it because you didn't follow instructions. This is very different campus to campus. The policies about flyers can vary significantly. In some cases, there's a stamping policy. This is pretty common, where you just need to get them approved by a building manager or someone. What I tell people is there's probably a lonely person who lives in your student center whose job is to work with student organizations and let them know what these policies are. So yeah, you need to make sure, is there a stamping typing policy? Are there boards you can't post on because they're reserved for departments? Whatever the requirements are, you need to know what they are so that your flyers don't get torn down by the institution. Flyers also might get torn down by just sort of dicks on campus. There are ways to avoid that with creativity. The example I like to use is we had one group that had a problem with this, and what they ultimately did is they added a comment section on the bottom of their flyer where people could post comments or commentary about the group, so which means people drew dicks all over their flyers. But the important thing to note about that is that the flyers stayed up. So if you encourage people to vandalize your flyers, they will rather draw dicks on your flyers than tear them down. And if the goal is to make sure the flyers stay up, prefer having dicks put on them than anything else like them torn down. Right on. So, another thing about flyers I want to sort of drive into your head, wallpapering, when you can do it, you don't want to cover up other people's flyers, but if you reserve a board all to yourself, wallpapering can turn a single flyer into a much bigger poster, essentially. It's very eye-catching, and it can generally look really professional and cool if you do it well, but again, don't take up other people's flyer space, and make sure you're actually allowed to do this. Again, there's a lonely person in your student center that knows if you can do this or not. So, chalk. This is another way that you can be very creative on your campus. If your campus allows chalking, which is another thing you need to check, usually arid campuses don't allow it because the rain doesn't wash it away. But yeah, know your chalking policies. Usually you can't draw on vertical surfaces or on buildings or anywhere that rain doesn't hit. But yeah, you can do chalking about specific events that are coming up to let people know what's going on. You can be creative and turn a sewer grate into a flying spaghetti monster, and this is sort of a problem that happens in chalking. If people are erasing your chalk, what that actually says in completion is millions of Americans are good without God. And what's important there is the clever Christians and such on campus were erasing the out. So we thought, well, we should take photos of that. And I had about 5 people on campus with sticks of chalk that would replace it every time it got erased and take a photo. So we wound up with this really cool pattern of layers of erased chalk on water. That's a really powerful image. You might have a campus newspaper that would want to cover that. You might have some bloggers that would be interested in covering that. So yeah, photos are important, and you want to be creative in dealing with this kind of vandalism stuff. Another thing about chalking, you can put a volunteer team together. That's a great way to keep freshmen and sophomores involved with the group, is send them out to do chalking. It's something that can keep them invested in the group. Likewise, tabling. I recommend doing consistent tabling, usually a week out of every month. Other groups do different things. The idea is you want to have a consistent presence on campus. The value of tabling over, say, flyering or chalking is you're putting a human face on your group, which is immensely important because you can't form a bond with a flyer usually. So you want to be able to do that. I want you to keep in mind the pink gorilla. I'll get back to that. I do want to say that a lot of groups do tabling training at the beginning of the year to let people know what the best practices of tabling are. There is a talk specifically on tabling tomorrow by Casey Brescia. I don't remember what time it is. Look it up. I highly recommend going to it because the better you are at tabling, usually the better you are at promotion in general. So I highly recommend learning the best practices there. Moving on from tabling, group shirts. Much like tabling, this puts a human face on your group. So if you don't have group shirts, that's something you should prioritize. Not only does it allow you to be creative in coming up with a shirt, not only does it look cool and professional, but it also, I will get to this slide in just a sec. Hey, more cool shirts. University of Central Florida. Those are our pre-branded shirts if you can't afford to do shirts yourself or you don't have a designer that can do it. We have shirts in-house that we sell at cost to you if you want them. Right, it turns your members into walking flyers that are human faces advertising your group. Cool, right? So you need to think of t-shirts not just as a cool thing that can make you money and look cool, but also as a way to promote yourself. So you want to make sure your members are on best behavior when they are wearing your group shirt and make that clear that they are a representative of your group when they're wearing your shirt. But it is something to keep in mind. It is another promotional method that is effective, even a little more effective than tabling because you move. You're a mobile flyer that can move anywhere on campus, whereas a table you can't usually pick up and carry with you, at least not effectively. So yard signs. Some of the campuses allow this, some don't. Again, you'll have to know your policy, and this varies campus to campus. The thing I want to get across here is something I'll come back to a number of times. You'll see that Crew had professionally done yard signs. That probably cost them a pretty penny, and they had the money to spend on that. But this Greek organization basically just tore up a box and painted on it. The point I want to make here is that you can compete on campuses with no budget. the difference in advertising space there is nothing. Like, you're reaching the same amount of eyes. That one does look a little more professional, but how much more expensive was that to look a little more professional? My point here is you don't have to spend money to compete for eyes on your campus. It's actually a remarkably level playing field compared to any other kind of situation. Like, they can't buy TV spots or a major advertising campaign on campus. Anything any student organization can do on your campus to promote, you can too. And you can probably do it without spending a lot of money. So banners. This is something I'm seeing increasingly common on campuses. Typically they're in the student center, sometimes they're hanging on buildings. Again, I want to point out that that big crew banner with their professional branding on it is right next to the dentist club where they just drew a big tooth on a sheet. Again, that was cheaper, I guarantee it. You don't have to spend money to be able to compete with eyes on a campus. And you even see that's the Secular Student Alliance at UT San Antonio doing their banner. I'm always happy to see when our groups actually do this. This is another good example of the University of West Florida's student government organization spent a bunch of money on their branded flyer with the school stuff right next to the Gay Straight Alliance, which is just paint on a sheet. So again, you can see more examples of that. Paint on a sheet is good enough. You can put it up there. You do want to make sure that you can do that. Check with that lonely person in the student center that has that job. But yeah, that's my point there, is you can compete without spending a lot of money. Again, check with what your banner policies are. You don't want to be violating those. If you don't have a banner and you don't want to paint on a sheet, you can always make your own banner. The big thing I want to say there is you want to like shop around to make sure you're not spending a ton of money on your banner, because you could probably get a better deal through like a local printer or something. And if you use the SSA name, you can actually get a banner from us. Typically it's used for tabling supplies, but you could always figure out a way to like use that as your banner on campus. Just use a little creativity and think of ways to do that. And if you're not an SSA branded group, you can still get one. I think they're $25, which is still probably cheaper than you can get a banner like that. Something else I want to put out there is that you should be thinking in 3 dimensions when you're doing tabling, when you're promoting yourself. So this is, again, I believe that's at the University of Texas, San Antonio. For Darwin Day, they made this big 3-dimensional display where they had people take pictures of themselves as like the latest chain in the evolutionary progress. It's a cool idea for getting people to take pictures, and it looks cool. It catches people's eyes, which is something that's key about using 3 dimensions. Also A-frames, which are on some campuses and not others. Again, you need to know what's available on your campus. But yeah, think 3-dimensionally. Even just having some sort of cardboard setup, or say a pink gorilla at your table, any kind of gimmick like that that's in 3 dimensions that makes your table stand out next to any other tables that are next to you is important to do, and will make you more prominent than other tables. You are competing for eye space with all the other tables next to you, and you need to think about how can we stand out from all the other tables. And this is something Greek organizations are already on. Greek organizations and Christian organizations almost universally are the organizations that know how to promote best on campuses. So something else I'll get to is you want to imitate success on your campuses, or even other campuses. If you see something that works, like other SSA groups here that have done something cool, you should imitate that on your campus if you can. So you see these big Greek letters that they use. They usually put these behind their table when they're on campus, at least what I've seen when I'm traveling. This is like, that probably didn't take them that long to create one of these, but it certainly catches your eye when you're walking around campus, no doubt there. So business cards. We will print out business cards for you for free. secularstudents.org/business cards. Those ones on the far right over there are the ones, or at least my right, are ones that we'll print out for you in your school colors, with whatever logo you want. They're great to hand out at your table. You can do cool little designs with them. And they also go into people's pockets more easier than like a pamphlet or a flyer, and then they come out of the pocket and they remember what your group is and your contact info. This one from the University of Alabama, Birmingham is also cool because they put their meeting dates on it and where they meet, which is a really cool idea for a custom business card. So it's basically a portable flyer more so than it is a business card. And they actually got free printing on campus, which is why they didn't go through us. If your campus offers something like free printing, take advantage of that. Absolutely. Digital display boards. These pop up at a lot of campuses, usually in libraries and student centers. Usually this is a matter of figuring out who's in charge of it and sending them a slide of whatever information you want to send them. Usually you can just do an existential thing to say we exist, what your meeting times are. Or you can send them something for a specific event that's coming up. Particularly if that event is in that building, you'll want people to see it. And like a lot of student centers have installed these really fancy display boards for all the events happening in the student center, and others like have put them on the individual rooms to say who's in that room at that time. If that's the case, you need to be saying what your group is when you apply for that thing. This is the SSA group at University of South Florida when I went to visit them. That is their meeting, but it just says weekly meeting in a room. So if anybody's just wandering by that display board, they have no idea who's meeting in there. So you need to know when you're putting the information in, where it's going, and make sure that people can recognize you. That's a wasted opportunity for free promotion on their campus. I'm not going to talk too much about traditional media or new media because there's other talks this weekend about that. Kelly Freeman's going to be doing quite a bit of that this afternoon. But I do want to make the point that you should not forget that the media exists and that it's a way to promote yourself. Particularly, you need to be doing press releases. If you've got a big speaker coming in or you're doing a big event, don't forget that the media is there. Your campus media, your local media, they might not have anything else going on. So send them a press release. We can walk you through that process. It's not as difficult as it might sound, and you might get some really great media hits out of it. You need to know your local shenanigans. Now, local shenanigans, in this case, I'm going to specifically say campus preachers. The big campus preachers, like Brother Jed and Tom Short, have public schedules of which campuses they're going to. Because honestly, they love it when we counter-protest them. Because theoretically, they're thinking, oh, more people show up. But what really happens is more people know that you're there, because nobody cares about them. So you can go with Horsehead Mass, or you can do something I particularly love, which is Campus Preacher Bingo. We have an activity packet of this online, and this has worked immensely well. Like, there's so many reasons why this is good. It disarms a situation that can otherwise potentially turn hostile with a good bit of humor and creativity, and it also lets people know you're there, and people really appreciate like a little funny spin on something that can otherwise be really unpleasant for them when they're wandering around campus. You can make somebody's day with this. You should also know of local separation of church and state issues. Like, you can probably spot that there's something wrong here. If you can't, well, you shouldn't be doing a prayer caravan in elementary school. So know if there's a big separation of church and state issue in your area. I would recommend reading Friendly Atheist. He usually like spotlights stuff when it's happening in local areas. Otherwise, just read the news and sort of pay attention. And you can potentially do some sort of activism that can, you can publicly make statements or that sort of thing. And particularly if something like this is going on, the media is more likely to come to you for a statement on something, particularly if you sent them press releases before. You should also know the history of your area. This weekend is the 100th anniversary of the start of the Scopes trial. This is in Dayton, Tennessee. This is the courthouse where it took place. And there was a group at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga down the road, and somehow it never occurred to them to like take a field trip with like a history professor or something, which would have been a great idea for an event. So yeah, know the history in your area. There might be something really cool that could make for a really cool event. One of the last things I'm going to talk about is you should know your campus. There's a lot of really interesting campus-unique advertising techniques. Like there might be rocks you can paint on. There might be a free speech tunnel or a free speech wall. There's this stuff we're not going to know about your campus, but you'll know about it. And that lonely person in the student center that's now your best friend should know about it. So yeah, you need to know this stuff. But also you should know your campus in the sense of who is on your campus. Because I want to get this across, word of mouth is the most effective way you can promote. And honestly, word of mouth and your reputation stays around a lot longer than any flyer will. So knowing the people in the student center, knowing whoever runs your interfaith organization, knowing any professors that might be interested in the group, having professors speak at meetings costs you nothing, and the professors will love you for it. Knowing if there's a Buddhist club on campus, any other club on campus that can be an interesting intersection, you should know. You should know their leaders. You might be able to share best practices of how to do leadership transitions or something. You can really form some really good connections, and people will know that your club's there. If you exist in a bubble, that is a recipe for your group to die. You should not be living in a bubble on your campus. Other organizations should know that you're there and know who's in charge. So online, again, there's other talks about this. The thing I want to say about promotion and online presences is you need to know what happens when somebody Googles your group. So you need to know if you have Facebook, you need to know if there's a website, or if you're on OrgSync. And what you need to make sure is there are no dead web presences. Dead web presences look awful and people assume your group is dead. So if there's a website that hasn't been updated in 2 years, figure out who the admin is and delete it. Or take it over and use it. You need to make sure there's no dead web presences and make sure all the web presences that exist are being used and that you know how to transition them to a new leader, or else they will become dead web presences. The other thing you should know is external versus internal web presences. A Facebook page is external. You're posting photos for people to see from the general public. You're posting announcements for the general public. A Facebook group is for you and your members to talk about stuff and to generally hang out online. That should not be your public web presence. That should be private. You should be using both of those because they serve different purposes. I highly recommend having a Facebook page and a Facebook group. All right, so I'm reaching the end of my talk, so I might skip over some of this stuff. Go to Dave Chervis's talk on branding. Basically, you can use the SSA logo and customize it. There's guidelines for that at /alt-logo on secularstudents.org. And you can be creative with that. Or you can use your own branding. If you use your own branding, what you need to know is that you've got to be able to transition it to your next leaders, or else they're going to wind up rebranding anyway, or they won't know how to design stuff, or whatever. You want your logo, regardless of what you do with it, to look professional and look impressive and catch the eye. So all these are pretty good examples of that. So the last thing, creativity. This is so important. This is how you compete without spending money like other student organizations on campus. You have to be creative and think outside of the box and use every avenue available to you. This is from the 2012 conference, and my old group made a giant mascot head based on our logo. It was an icebreaker, a conversation starter, got people talking about the conference because we had all the speakers sign it. It was amazing. We used it for tabling, and the idea is that a lot of people are intimidated when they see your table. They're not sure how to start a conversation. They don't know. They may have never talked to an atheist or agnostic before. It's a way to break the ice, and that can be so important for when you're tabling. Likewise, we did chalking outside of our International Student Center in Korean. Again, it's a new population on campus we hadn't advertised to before. It was outside the box. Nobody else is chalking in Korean, so why not? It's a new population to go to. So this is the kind of outside the box stuff you should be thinking about. So all of these principles I learned from this goofy dude here. His name is William Castle. He was a movie producer and director who was known for three things: imitating everything Alfred Hitchcock did, he was known for not having a budget, and he was known for gimmicks. So he was famous for, over here on House at Haunted Hill, he had a three-dimensional skeleton that he hung over the audiences at various theaters. He had a punishment poll to decide whether one character lived or died at the end of a movie. He had another one for a movie called The Tingler, in which he rigged vibrating mechanisms to the back of some of the seats to replicate the monster, which fed on fear. He was thinking outside of the box so he could compete with Hollywood's movies without spending as much money. The idea is that this got people in the door. His movies actually aren't all that terrible, but nobody would have gone to see them if they hadn't been drawn in by a gimmick. So you shouldn't be too ashamed of using gimmicks, because it's a way to get people in the door. As far as retaining people once they're in the door, that's why you need to go do all the other talks at the conference. That's all about keeping people in the door once you have them there. This is the first step in a multi-step way to build your group. So, last notes. It's all about the eyes. You're competing for eyes on campus. You want to be creative. That's how you compete without spending all of your money. Campuses are a level playing field as far as advertising go. Anything other groups can do, you can do it better. Specifically crew. Anything crew can do, you can do better. Imitating success is so valuable. Don't be ashamed to imitate things that have worked, because that's how things work. That's some of the most successful groups have imitated things like Campus Preacher Bingo or Stone a Heathen, or any number of our activity packets are based on previous success. So yeah, links to know. So promotion. All of this stuff is written at secularstudents.org/promotion. If you need money to do anything, you can get it from us at /grants. If you want to tell us about something cool you did, go to Brag It Up, and you can fill out a form and get free stuff from us. And last but not least, if you've taken photos, like those of you who were in here earlier and took a photo, I want you to practice this and send that photo to photos@secularstudents.org. I want to know how many people actually send it there, because I'll see it if you do. So everybody that took that photo, I want you to get into the habit of sending photos to us at photos@secularstudents.org. So I expect every photo that was taken in this room earlier, when I took the photo, I want all of those photos at photos@secularstudents.org, because we're not going to complain about getting too many photos. And I want you to remember that email address, because photos are valuable. So, if you need to contact me, I'm Gordon at secularstudents.org, or Godron at secularstudents.org. I also co-run our video advice series, Secular Startup, which you can find on YouTube and Facebook. And my movie blog is misanthropy.com, where I talk about stuff like William Castle and that sort of thing. So that's all I've got. I think I don't have any spare time for questions, unfortunately, but grab me any other time throughout the weekend.